Hello and welcome to the Videos Corner. I'm your host Martin, also known as Falcon1, and today I talk about editing and in particular about AMVs with CrackTheSky. Hello!
Hello, thank you for having me. This is an honor.
Oh, it's an honor to have you here
Thank
because
you.
I know you for a very long time and you have some great material also on your YouTube channel where you
Thank you.
talk about very interesting stuff, which is also something I recommend the listeners of this podcast because
thank you.
this video series you have, like what makes it great, is phenomenal and
Thank you.
very entertaining.
I really appreciate that. That is something I'm quite proud of, and I hope if any of your listeners decide to check it out that they will find it enlightening and entertaining and worth their time.
Yeah, I hope so too, and I will put a link down so people can find you and your channel. So
Thank you.
But we are here, and the first question is always like, when did all this AMV or editing started for you, and how and why?
Sure. So my story is probably not all that interesting, but I was first introduced to AMVs back in high school in 2004, I think. I was sleeping over at a friend's house and he showed me these AMVs, like these really old AMVs. I had no idea what they were. I wasn't really a huge fan of anime at that time, although I was just starting to get into it. And so he showed me a bunch of AMVs. I only really remember one of them. It was an Evangelion video set to
Rammstein,
it was a
Engel?
Metallica song.
Oh, okay.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Angle. It was by an editor named Jess Master, and I can't remember the song. Enter Sandman.
Uh-uh.
It was a Evangelion Enter Sandman video. And I wasn't even really a huge fan of Metallica, but for some reason, like this video and the couple others that I saw, like really just like resonated with me. So the next day I remember I went home and I was like, I want to try this. This seems like a really cool thing to do. So I went on my computer, I found out that it had Windows Movie Maker. Of course, everyone back at that time started on Windows
Yeah.
Movie Maker, and I'm no exception. So, and I can't remember if the first thing I made with that was using FLCL, like these really bad FLCL rips I had on like a CDR, or if it was from, I had the Final Fantasy VII PC game and I ripped all the FMVs off of that and edited with those. And I made a bunch of different like crappy videos using various things at that time. And it was like a 2 or 3 week obsession. And then I just basically dropped it, forgot about it. I didn't even know animemusicvideos.org existed at the time. And at that time, I had dial-up internet, so I couldn't have downloaded anything from there anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I totally forgot about AMVs for 2 years. And then in my first week when I got to university, for the first time in my life, I had high-speed internet in my dorm. And I could not, for the life of me, I could not tell you why AMVs came to my mind at that moment. But one of the first things I did after getting everything set up and my computer running and everything was I logged on to, I looked up AMVs and I found animemusicvideos.org and I created an account. And then like I just dove in, I got involved in the community, and I guess the rest is kind of history at that point.
Oh, yeah. That was so interesting. When I found the site for the first time, it was like, wait, that looks cool.
Yeah.
Oh, there are music videos and I can download them. Oh my God. Yeah. And
Yeah, it was just one of those things where, and it's so hard for people who didn't grow up in the 90s.
yeah.
It's so hard to like put yourself in a mindset where having access to all these free AMVs was like this crazy novelty to me. And like today we have YouTube, you can look up anything you want on YouTube at any time, but this was before then, or right when that was kind of getting started. And so for me, it was just this brand new world that was really intriguing and interesting and was totally unlike anything I had had exposure to before.
Okay. But when you started, was it like you had some help, or did you get in contact with other people and they taught you some stuff, or was it just like how for me it was then, yeah, I started alone and then got in contact with others and started to talk about it?
Yeah, so like when I first made my crappy music videos back in 2004, I had no help. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just like, I had enough like computer knowledge to to kind of figure out how to put clips on a timeline and how to import a song. And
Hmm.
I knew enough things to kind of try to sync some things up and blah blah blah. So that I was able to figure out on my own with Windows Movie Maker. But once I actually started making proper AMVs and got involved in the org, I got involved in the community like right away. Like I joined the forums, I started posting, I started kind of making friends and making connections and things. But for the most part, my teacher, so to speak, on how to edit and encode footage and all that, do all the technical stuff were the guides that were available then. Ermac and Absolute Destiny's Guide to All Things Video. I remember the name.
Oh yeah.
I spent like days just like reading through all that technical, all those details, learning about how video works and all that, and just like absorbing that into like my bloodstream. And then I remember occasionally asking questions here and there, but for the most part, I think I was pretty self-taught. There were some other guides that I
Hmm.
tackled as well on like how to use Sony Vegas, which was the program I decided to go with after Windows Movie Maker.
Yeah, I know that parts with the guides. I was also in the back in the time I printed them out.
Oh man, yeah.
Because for me was the biggest problem. First of all, we needed to pay for internet also
Yeah.
all the time, and so it was cheaper to just print it out and read it some time
Sure.
of the day. And also my English was so bad, so I had to struggle to read it. So I was more likely to sit down, have this paper next to me and the dictionary, and was just checking if when I find a word, what does it mean? And so yeah.
Right. Yep. That's one way to do it. And I mean, if I had to pay for internet, I'm sure I would have done something like that too. But
Yeah.
that was like my free time in my dorm was just like staring at my computer, flipping through the guide, like learning all this stuff,
Mm.
and it was really fascinating to me at the time. So
Over the years, you made a lot of videos. Is there one in particular where you say that's your favorite one or where you put most energy in?
yeah, so there are some videos where I put a lot of energy in that don't mean that much to me. So I'm not too interested in talking about those, but there are two videos that I would consider kind of like my babies. The first one is one I released a few years ago called Aberration. It was a Samushishi video, and it uses a James Blake song. And I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but basically it's really blurry. It's blurred out all the like there are a
Mm.
lot of heavy blur overlays and color overlays and things. And the reason I love that video so much is because that video was something I had wanted to make that exact video for probably I don't remember. It had to have been at least 5+ years where it was just sitting in the back of my mind. The footage was like ripped on my hard drive too. I just never actually picked up the project and worked on it. It's a total ripoff of the official music video for that song. Like that's where I got the idea. I wanted to try to emulate what
Hmm.
the official music video looked like. And when I finally made it, that was just, it came out so perfect to what I had in my mind when I started the project. There are like watching it now, there are one or two scenes that I would maybe change, but like 95 to 99% of that video is like exactly what I want and how I want it to look. So for me that was a big deal because it was just an aesthetic that I had really wanted to tackle for a long time and I finally was able to do it and it came out perfectly.
That's always great to have something like that and get to it and then really can do it. And I think it's normal that sometimes you have this problem that later on you think like, oh, maybe I could change that or that because I think we get more experience and so we see maybe something in a different light.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that actually kind of brings me to the second video. I would consider this one I'm about to talk about as my favorite video of everything I've
Okay.
ever done. And that is a video I released a couple of years ago called Dysfunction Complex. I mean, on first glance, for most people, it's probably like they would probably think, oh, this is a good video. I don't understand why he thinks it's his favorite video or whatever. But it's a lovely complex video set to a Taylor Swift song, which again, on the like when I say it that way, it's like what's the big deal? But
Mm.
for me, that is a perfect video by my own standards and how I tend to perceive my videos as like time goes on. I tend to start to see more and more faults that hasn't happened with this one. Like I have rewatched that video so many times since I originally finished it and released it, and it has not gotten any more boring, or and no faults have shown themselves to me. So I love the way that video is edited. It's there's so much fun sync success. It did exactly, again, it did what I set out to do, which was to make something non-linear and non with no real core chronology, but still kind of an overarching theme. And I don't know, I love that video. That is my baby. That's my favorite video that I've ever made. And if any one of your listeners ends up watching only one video from me, I would recommend that one.
Yeah, why not? For many projects, do you have like a plan to put out, make a storyboard or something, or is it just like, okay, I have this idea and I start from the beginning or just in the middle, or how do you approach this project?
So I have never once storyboarded, and I've thought about it. I just, it's not how my brain works, I guess. If other people do that, that's fine. And I know that many people do that. But for me, the idea typically, if I want to edit an AMV, the idea typically starts with the song, where I hear a song that I really like and I can think of, multiple points in the song that I'm like, I want to make something to sync to this part of the song. That's typically, I would say 80+% of cases, that's where my
Mm.
ideas come from, is hearing the song and being stimulated. And then from there, I like to have fewer specific ideas of what I want to see in a video when I start editing as compared to having more, just
Mhm.
because I have found over the years in the many videos I've made that what I think will work in a place, it may work, but there's often something better. And I don't want to get myself too tied or too, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want any idea that I go into when I'm making an AMV to be too precious to let go if something better comes along.
Mm.
So I like to kind of have a general overview of what I want to see, and then as I start editing, I just try and figure it out as I go. And if I see something better than the idea I originally came in with, I'll go with the better thing. But I don't storyboard. I don't plan too much ahead of
Mm.
time. I try to be a little less methodical about it.
Okay, okay. Are you one of the editor that goes more likely, okay, I start at the beginning and go through it linear, or are you someone who jumps around and listen to it and puts the scenes, what you find first, to any point in the middle or maybe?
I do kind of tend to edit linearly, but normally I won't start right at the beginning of the song, because most songs have like this intro portion that I usually have no idea what I want to do with when I start editing.
Mm.
So typically, if it's a song with vocals, I'll usually start wherever the vocals start, and then I'll go through, and as I'm trying to explain this, I'm realizing that I really don't have process. Usually it's like I start wherever I have my first ideas.
Mm.
So I'll get those on the timeline, and then I'll kind of fill in the gaps. And often I'll end up going back to the stuff that I already put down to begin with and replace it with something better as my concept progresses or whatever. So, short answer to the question, no, I don't tend to edit linearly, although I have done that several times in the past.
No, no, it's fine. That's the thing. Like we all have this process evolving, how we work, how what works best for us, and that's what
Yep.
also I want to show the listeners. So everyone is different, and maybe something like a storyboard works for someone, but maybe it could be better to do it like you do. Just start with the scene you have in your head and think that's good. Put it on a timeline, go through, and if you think, oh yeah, it could be better on this point, put it there and take the scene on the other point. That's completely fair, and that's a good thing also to hear.
Yeah. And I actually want to go back to something I said earlier, because I think
Yeah.
it's an important point. Namely, and this is a piece of advice I would give to people who are, maybe newer to editing. But again, I would just emphasize, don't hold on to an idea. Don't be so stubborn about it that you're unwilling to let go of it if something better comes along. I can't stress this enough, because that is one of the things that I've noticed over the years as I watch older videos of mine, is like I can sometimes point to places in an AMV that I've made in the past where I'm like, I remember thinking at the time that this wasn't that great, but I didn't want to let go of it, or I didn't want to try to find something that maybe was better. And that has always just I always regret it when that happens. I always kind of regret those points in the video. And I always wish I had. And that, I think, is also why I like that one AMV I just talked about
Mm.
dysfunction complex so much is because I did not compromise on anything in that video. Like everything I did exactly how I wanted it to be, and I had to redo so many parts of that until I was satisfied. So just a kind of a something I wanted to emphasize because I think it is really important, especially for newer editors.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I now I remember also some parts where I was like putting scenes on for Twinkle, for example, where was like in the end scenes and was like, yeah, come on, it works. And after it went live like a month later, I was like, oh gosh, I should have taken something different.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know that feeling to regret that. And maybe it's sometimes better to, if you are at the point where you say, come on, let it go, better just let the project set for like a week or two
Right.
and come back and then look again at it. And most people maybe will find, yeah, I should change that.
Yeah, and I think that's just kind of like part of the process of maturing as an editor is kind of recognizing that in yourself. But I think you can shortcut that entire part, which can, for some editors, can be years long. If you just realize, like, don't compromise on the quality of your video. Make sure that what you are releasing is something that you're happy with from the first second that the video plays to the last second.
Yeah, that's because also when you want to look back at some videos of yours, it's always great. And I think many people can appreciate it if
Yeah.
they see, like, okay, they think more about it and not just put out some scenes.
Yeah.
You already said you went from Widows Movie Maker to Vegas. Back in the
Hmm.
day, I think it was Sony Vegas. Now it's Magic's Vegas. But
Correct.
you are still using Vegas, or
Yes.
did you change?
Yeah, I will be a Vegas user for life, most likely. I don't see myself switching away from it anytime soon. It's something I'm super comfortable with. It's something that has all I need for the types of videos I make, and I see no reason to switch. The only thing I would I would caution is I have Vegas 8 from way back in the day, and I have
Oh.
Vegas 15, which I got Humble Bundle a few years ago. And Vegas 15 is one of the glitchiest, crappiest pieces of software I have ever used. I'm not exaggerating with that. Like it is a
Mm.
piece of crap. Anyone looking to get Vegas, just beware that the newer versions of Vegas, or at least 15, I don't know about any other versions, I guess, but my experience with the newer versions has not been good.
I can tell about 14 and 16.
Yeah.
14 was okay. I worked with that some videos. Then I was like also get it from Hum Bundle version 16,
Yeah.
and it crashed like in the first 3 minutes 3 times.
Yep. Yep.
And so I was like, nope. When I want to edit in Vegas, then I use 14 because the new versions, as you said, are more likely to be unstable.
Yep. I used 15 for a few years, maybe 2 years, and I tried to power through it and I just couldn't. So for my AMV editing, I've reverted back to Vegas 8. Like there's some quality of life issues or things that I'm missing from
Mm.
that Vegas 15 did introduce that I really liked, but I've just learned to live without them again because it was crashing every half an hour, dropping frames, messing. It was
Oh
a
yeah.
buggy piece of crap. So can't deal with it.
But you can't most likely work around because you already know Vegas 8 like from inside out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's also a thing. I think if you know your program, you can work around so many things what
Yep.
came in your versions or in other programs. So
Yeah.
that's always good. If you can think back over the long time, what was for you the hardest thing to learn about editing? Is there something in particular where you say, oh yeah, I had a hard time to understand that or to get used to it, like syncing or making some effects or masking or anything?
So I'm gonna answer this question, I think, probably a little differently than you're intending. But
Oh.
I mean, there have always been techniques or, things about specific to editing that, yeah, it took me some time to figure out. But for me, I think the hardest thing has been to become comfortable enough in my skills as an editor to be able to feel like I can make what I want to make. So, and honestly, this is something that has come with experience,
Mm.
but but I mean, I just think back to like when I first started, and everyone, most editors at least have those first stage of their career where they just put out stuff that at the time they think looks good, but looking back, it's just cringy and weird and not good at all. So, and I feel like that part of my editing career, quote unquote, was like the first 7 years of my time as an editor was spent making stuff that was not very good because I wasn't comfortable enough in the entire process to make something that I could look back on and enjoy. However, there did come a point where I eventually felt like I had enough experience and I had seen enough AMVs and I knew my programs well enough that I didn't really have to think too hard about the technical aspects of it. If
Mm.
there was an effect or if there was something I wanted to see in an AMV, I knew how to do it. But it was hard to get to that point because it took a lot of experimentation. It took a lot of, I mean, frankly, failure. It
Oh.
took a lot of time just to put output enough and to watch enough to get to that point. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. It's more like what I was always often referring to. Get to the point you can break down stuff to it's
Right.
minimalizing and analyzing it and can then use this knowledge for your own work.
Yeah, because I think one of the things that every editor I think should strive for is to reach a point of proficiency where the process just feels intuitive. Like maybe the technical side of it is still a struggle or still stuff you have
Mm.
to research and figure out, but like at the core of it, the scene selection, the basic sync, etc., like it's not something you have to really think about. You can just do it. That is something that it's difficult to get to that point and it takes a lot of time. Unfortunately, I don't know if there's a way to shortcut that, but for me that was definitely the hardest thing.
Maybe some people get through your videos or my podcasts a shorter way because they're
That'd
realizing
be
it
great.
more easily.
Yeah, that's kind of the goal of what I'm doing, and yeah, I could definitely see that or that kind of advice being dispensed through this podcast as well.
Are there or were there some editors who inspired you or you looked up to over the years? There are some inspiration for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I can't count the number of people who have inspired me in many ways
Yeah.
over the course of my editing career. And I think everyone who enjoys AMVs even a little, like no one develops their own style or anything in a vacuum, right? So you make something almost all the time. You make something because you do what someone else has done. You like an AMV, therefore you want to make a similar AMV, or maybe in the opposite direction, you like AMVs as a whole, but you've never seen this thing in the medium, so you want to make that thing. Everyone is inspired by other people in various ways, right?
Mm, yeah.
However, there are two editors I'm going to name drop here. One editor, the one whose style I have copied more blatantly than any other, and that would be Pie and Beer. Their work is just so I can't explain how much Pie and Beer's videos have meant to me over the years and have influenced my own style. He does such great internal sync and without relying heavily on any kind of effects or anything too techy. It's all very subtle, but it's all his videos are just so smooth and I love them so much. And I have tried to incorporate a lot of techniques and stylistic things from Pie and Beer's videos into my own over the years. So that's one editor. The
Mm.
other editor is one actually Video Beats talked about in your previous podcast, and that
Ah,
is Megamom.
yeah.
So Megamom was an editor I discovered really early on in my time on the org. I think within like the first month, I had downloaded one of his videos, and ever since then, he has been one of the most. No, I'm not even going to say one. He's been the most consistently creative editor that I am aware of. His videos are always the way
Mm.
I like to phrase it is it's almost like he's seeing the entire AMV medium from a different angle than everyone else. I don't know how he does it, but like almost every video he makes is just, it takes some really unique, clever idea that I've never seen in another AMV and just expands it to the length of an entire AMV. And he just has such a creative mind that I mean, I can point out tons and tons of editors who have made one or more creative videos, like truly creative videos that I've never seen before
Mm.
in the medium. He's the only editor I can say that does that almost every single time. So while I haven't really been inspired by him from a stylistic standpoint, like I don't try to
Yeah.
emulate anything that he really does, his entire approach to the medium is very inspiring to me. I want to be someone that brings that level of creativity to AMVs, whether that's through AMVs of my own or through stuff I'm doing that aren't AMVs but are related. Like, for example, my What Makes a Great series or my blog or things like that. So yeah, he's been a huge inspiration to me over the years.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Mega Mom makes some incredible videos that are
Yeah.
so different. It's often like you watch it and you think like is it the same guy? Is it the same
Right.
person? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. And they're
that's
all so different. It's so another thing I love is like you never know what you're going to get, but you can pretty much guarantee it's not going to be like something he's made before. And it's not going to be like something that's been made in AMV form before. So it's a really cool combination to have.
and also a bit crazy because you are always thinking like how does he do that? I'm really I was always all the time I was like how do you get to this idea and then the next video that's completely different. How? It's very interesting to how he approaches that stuff or approached that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. I really look up to him. He's a really good. He's like just a really nice guy too. If you ever get the chance to talk to him, he's super nice. He's super humble, and I love him. I will sing his praises until he gives me a reason not to.
Because when he kicks your balls, okay, then
Hmm.
maybe.
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe then.
maybe then. Okay. Yeah, you like lots of videos, but is there some particular style you prefer in AMVs to make or to watch? More likely could be a genre, or is it more like simple editing, storytelling, or is there effects, a good use of effects or something like that? Is there something particular, or are you completely a person who says, yeah, I don't care what I get, give it to me?
Yeah, I tend to be more the latter where I'm not beholden or particularly attracted to any one style above another. I can tell you I'm not typically drawn to action videos very much. I don't
Mm,
care for most comedy videos or parody or commercial trailer videos. I could care less about those. They don't do anything for me most of the time.
that's fair.
Yeah, in general, I think I don't really have a bias towards or against effects videos either. I mean, I think if you, for example, if you look through my top AMV lists on my blog, it tends to be dominated by simpler videos. So I guess in that sense, yeah, maybe there is a little bit of a bias that in that I tend to prefer simpler stuff. But honestly, I like any video that is well thought out
Mm,
and is from a genre perspective though, I
mm.
don't really have preference, I would say, other than what I already mentioned.
Yeah, and it's for me. It's for a effect video. If the effect supports the video, then it's something different. And
Yeah.
instead of being more like the eye catch, what we
Yeah.
often see in newer forms of this short edits, where thing is like, yeah, that's more eye catching instead of showing some scenes.
Right. And I'm actually going to also I feel bad doing this because it's just repeating what was already said in Video Beats interview with you. They struck on something that I really feel strongly about as well, in that I really want to see heart in a video. I really want to know that the editor has put a little bit of themselves
Mm,
into whatever they make. And to me, I don't like maybe I'm just projecting onto some of these videos that I really like for other reasons that I am not able to articulate, but
mm.
I feel like I'm pretty good at detecting when an editor has actually put heart and soul and a little bit of themselves into their work versus when they're just making a video to make a video. Not that those videos can't be good, but
They're
I
missing
am
something.
yeah, I'm really drawn to the videos that seem to be more personal to the editor and which have some sort of deeper meaning or that can tell me a little something about who made it.
Also, there's always this one question I ask. It's like if someone would come up to you and ask you, hey, I want to start editing, where should I start or what should I do? I have no clue. What would you tell them?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and I'm going to repeat what some others have said again. I'm sorry, it's not a very Not a very interesting.
Yeah, this the thing is like I see this question very often online. I see it.
Yeah,
I'm very often on Reddit and see this question. Hey, I want to start with editing, and I see it like 50 times in a
yeah,
month. So I
yeah.
think it's a very important question. And if some people are more like, yeah, it's more like this direction, then maybe it helps to understand many other people. Okay, maybe I should go and try this.
And I think most times that question is asked by people who are interested in editing. It's probably more from like a technical perspective, like where do I go to get the footage? How do I put that footage in an editing program? Where do I get that editing program? I just don't think they're articulating it that way. But my answer to the question is assuming you have all that knowledge. And if you don't have that knowledge, figure that stuff out first because you're not going to be able to make a video if you don't know actually how to put footage on a timeline and do all that. So figure out the technical stuff first, but that's not very interesting to me. What I would say is the important thing is to just make something. Your first videos are not going to probably are not going to be videos that rock the world or that you're even going to like very much months or years down the line, but it is important that you actually get something out there because trust me, I'm not unique in this regard. This is like a running joke among editors, almost AMV editors, but like it's like the hardest thing about editing is actually getting started. It's not typically the technical stuff. It's not the finding this footage. It's actually sitting down and dedicating time to putting something together. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if I don't think it's specific to AMV editors at all. I think it's a human thing. But when there's a task that you have to do, even if it's something you want to do, it can be hard to actually sit down and do that thing. So my advice is just to push past that hump and actually start editing and put something out there. Just get something out there so that you can at least have something to show and be proud of and get motivated by for whenever you want to make your next video. The hardest thing though is getting started.
Yeah. Okay, I'm at this point where it's the hardest to finish something. Oh, but that's a different story.
Oh, okay, yeah. I don't know. I rarely have that problem. For me, it is so difficult these days for me to actually just sit down and start open like I'll tell you right now, I have like literally I
Mm.
think five projects at least. They're all the scenes are ripped. Like everything is set up, ready to go. I know what songs I want to use. I know the footage I want to use, blah blah. Like I literally just need to open my editing program and start actually putting stuff on the timeline and cutting. And I have been in this position for months now and I have not had the motivation to do it. Once I get started, it's usually like in a few days I can finish, but getting started is the hard part for me anyway.
I know both feelings. That's the hard thing is like I get sometimes to the point where now I start put some scenes in and then I'm just like I want to start something different. And so I don't finish that one,
Right.
and
Yep.
that's always not that great. But that's a different problem, I think.
I guess in general, the advice would be just make sure you finish something, whether you need to work on starting the project or need to work on
Just
actually finishing it. Just get to the end point, basically. If all you're doing
yeah.
is looking to get started, I think the most
Oh
important
yeah.
thing
Oh
is to
yeah.
just finish a video.
What is the most important part for you about editing and the hobby overall? Can be the community, can be just putting your thoughts on the timeline or showing it to the people. What is for you the most important?
For me, there are kind of two elements. For me, the community has been I can't really express in words how important AMVs have been to me over the years. Like I feel like everyone has those landmark moments in their life, right? Where they can point to a very specific time and place and they can remember everything about that particular time and place, even if it's only a few minutes where something monumentally important happened that just fundamentally
Oh yeah.
changed the course of their life. And a lot of people have multiple points like that, right? So for me, I can remember very, very distinctly the night where I found the org and I signed up, and that for me was just like that was one of those kind of forks in the road in my life where I unwittingly kind of, because I didn't know it at the time, but I chose a path. I ended up going down that path of AMVs, and it just absolutely changed my life in totally unexpected ways. Like, I've met so many amazing friends. Some of my best friends I've met through anime music videos. My best man ended up being an editor that I had met through the org. I have so many friends from the org and from those early days of editing that are really close to me. On top of that, outside of the social aspect, AMVs are, for me, they are one of the only, like, I guess, quote unquote, artistic creative outlets I
Mm.
have that I feel like I'm halfway decent at. So for me, that it's an important outlet to get those feelings and those ideas
Mm.
out in the ether somewhere, right? I'm not, everyone says they love editing. I'm not sure if that's true for me. Like, I don't necessarily love the process of putting clips on a timeline and
Mm.
making the cuts and doing the effects. Like, it's fine. It's a process, but for me, the what I love is the act of creating something. And this can, I mean, there are other elements of my life where that's true as well, where I'm creating in different areas. But for me, what I love is the act of creating something new. And editing AMVs just happens to allow me to do that in a way that where I really enjoy the output.
Oh yeah.
So, short answer again, it's the friends I've made, the community, and then the actual act of creating.
Oh yeah, I can understand that totally. Was a person who couldn't draw or was I
Right.
always wanted to create something, and with editing I had this opportunity to do that.
Right.
And that was one point for me to get creative, to put some thoughts into the video and share it. And then this one becomes the most important part for me, was the community, was the people I could talk with, could talk about so many different stuff, not only editing.
Right.
And I learned so much, and people helped me through some different times and all that. And that's also why I want to give something back to the community by doing this podcast, for example, and
Absolutely.
trying to help the people. So I'm really one of the person who says, for me the most important part is the community, is this sharing of a great hobby. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. The community is super important, and I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't logged into the org, that day almost 16 years ago, and made an account on animemusicvideos.org. I would be a completely different person. I have to believe. So it's yeah.
Not only you, also I couldn't speak English like now. Now I do.
Well, you've come a long way, my man.
Yeah, I think you remember the time on the IRC when I was writing and the most people were like, try it again, please.
I don't remember that specifically, but I think there were quite a few people who English was not their first language.
Yeah.
And but I do always just remember that never was much of a barrier, I feel like. And maybe this is just me getting all dewy-eyed and maybe I'm misremembering, but that is one thing I've always appreciated about the AMV community. Maybe a little more back then than now, but that it has always been an international community, and there's always been, I feel for the most part, some decent crossover between people from completely different parts of the world.
Oh yeah.
It's always been very welcoming, at least to me. But on the flip side, I also know that there have been some groups kind of that have formed, and I mean, it's totally natural. Language is a huge barrier for a lot of people, so it's natural. But
Yeah.
as a result, there have been these kind of groups that have kind of insulated themselves from the rest of the community and have kind of, as a result, developed their own particular styles or like I have certain associations with certain countries with the types of AMVs they make, and that's actually kind of cool too. And when you think about it, but
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's another topic I have, because the difference between the styles and the countries. We can't say it. For example, what I realized is that Europe has a different style approaching AMVs than the US, for example. The US for me feels more like more story driven, not that to bring emotion, make
Mhm.
a simpler editing. And in Europe, they are trying more to use effects and compositions to create something different, something new out of the stuff. It's not wrong
Yeah,
to have that, but yeah, it was something I saw over the years, that it's a different thing, but it's not bad thing, I think.
I tend to I try not to paint an entire
Yeah,
continent
sure.
in a broad brush stroke here, right? Although I have tended to kind of notice that. I feel like that has I don't really have an answer for why that is, and it is curious to me as to why that is. I also wonder though if there is maybe a little bit of like confirmation bias there because like for example, Europe has Japan Expo, right? That's a certain contest that is known for showcasing a very specific style of AMV like what you're describing. And so I wonder if it's just because of contests like that and certain studios that are tend to be based overseas and where they get most of the attention and most of those AMVs are what is kind of known that comes out of Europe,
Mm.
let's say. Whereas the US, I don't know that there's any kind of I actually don't know that I would say there's any kind of coherent or like single style that dominates in
No,
North American editing as much, but I don't know. It's an interesting topic that I'm not actually sure I'm well equipped enough to have a solid grasp or opinion on.
well, that's with the contest where people think it's they're biased. I think that's a normal thing that happened because you have like, okay, at some conventions you have your judges, and these judges have something in mind what makes a video great, for
Right,
example.
right.
And so they are sitting there, and when they get these videos, well, they don't like it, so it goes down. But on the other side, some people in Russia, for example, sitting there at AcrosCon and say, "Oh my God, that's the greatest shit I ever saw," because they are more likely to enjoy this kind of video. So it's a thing. It's normal.
I feel like Russia is kind of a maybe a bit of an extreme example because there's always been more of a language barrier between
Oh yeah.
Russia and the rest of the world than most other AMV communities. And when you have like a CrossCon or big contest, which I think is a Russian convention,
Yeah.
right? Or at least it's hosted on AMV News. Yeah, at CrossCon, like even back in like 2005, 2006, like I remember back then, like the Russians were the ones that were doing all the really cool effectsy stuff. Like I looked forward every year for a couple of years
Yeah.
to the winners of the Con contest because they were doing things I had never seen before, and like that was the bleeding edge of effects use was all coming out of Russia. And I think as a result of that, this is just me theorizing. I don't
Yeah.
actually know if
Yeah.
this
It's
is
okay.
the case, but I think because of Across specifically, that Russian editing has became associated with that super effectsy style, and so it all just kind of snowballed from there, right? So
Yeah.
maybe and because of the language barrier, a lot of I don't think there was a lot of sharing of the like there weren't many Russian editors who were like
It's fish.
normal Russian editors who just made maybe more normal stuff weren't getting the exposure because they didn't speak the English language and so they didn't know how to upload to the org or anything. So their videos never got into kind of the mainstream consciousness of what Russian AMVs looked like compared to just the stuff that would come out of EcrosCon, which is
Yeah.
what everyone knew. So
Yeah, that could be a thing, and but I think it's not a problem or something like that. I
no,
was just like that's the it things happens like that. Some contests have some opinions on how a video needs to look, and that's why I think it's totally normal. Then if some people expect something different from the results of a contest, for example,
right.
or see something on the top where other people see a different thing on top. It's
Yeah.
just so also that people know a contest, if you win it or not, it doesn't matter. It's just maybe we're not lucky enough to have the judges which like the stuff you made. Maybe some other people
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah, I mean, it also depends on the contest. So not all contests have the same judging criteria, right? So some of
Yeah.
them, you have like a panel of judges who determine what goes into the contest, and then maybe a panel of judges that actually judges the contest itself. In others, you have maybe one or two people who filter through all the AMVs they're sent, and then they decide what gets shown in the contest, which is then judged by the audience
Yeah.
or there's some mix of those scenarios, right? So every contest I think is a little different, and I think it has always surprised me. So for example, most years I will go to NandesCon or NDK, which is a convention, an anime convention in Colorado each year where there's a big AMV contest. Like it's a fairly substantial contest. Like the quality is generally pretty good. We get videos from all over the world. We get a good mix of styles and things. There's always at least one video that surprises me that the audience voted for it because it's an audience voted contest. And it's just like you'll see videos that have won in major contests, or not even maybe like
around the world.
well, around the world, but like not even necessarily convention contests, but
Mhm.
like, online hosted contests that are like really popular among editors and people who know AMVs that don't get the votes in audience voted contests. And so I think that there is sometimes this kind of disconnect between what we as editors like to see, and I say we as editors as a
Yeah,
very general we, right?
yeah, yeah.
But in comparison to what editors like to see versus what really resonates with an audience of of weebs in a convention setting. All this is to say that a contest win, in my opinion, doesn't mean that much. I usually look and see kind of what has won in specific contests
Mm.
just because I'm curious, but I don't put much stock in the accolades because it generally tells me nothing about whether or not I'll like the video.
I always follow all the contests. When I have found some contests, I look at the results, and there are always some videos where I say, yeah, yeah, it's okay for me. It's not the best, but that happens, and then I see some videos where I think, oh, okay, that would be better or something like that. But I
Yeah,
think, as you say, as we general editors, I think we look at it in a different way because we do this. We try to bring the technical stuff in and put in some thoughts where some viewers don't have the thoughts at this point and only see
right,
what they're getting. And then it's very often, if for example, the show is popular, the song is something that the audience more listen to likely, that can influence that.
right.
just
Yeah, absolutely.
just by saying, all in the back days, why did we have so many Dragon Ball Z Linkin Park videos? Because
Right.
they people like Dragon Ball and Linkin Park, so
Exactly. Yeah,
that's why we had Linkin Ball Z.
absolutely.
Do you think you could editing as a job,
No.
or no?
Not at all.
Not at all.
No, it's not even a question for me. So like I like very briefly considered that when I was like just getting into AMV editing and like
Mm.
I was still kind of, new in college and I was like, do I still trying to choose my major? I was like, do I want to maybe go down this path? No, not at all. Like I said, the editing process of, messing around in Vegas and clicking on things and cutting clips and stuff, I don't enjoy. I don't not enjoy it, but it's not like why I do this. The reason I do it is because I want to create something for myself. If I were to do editing as a career, I wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, I'd be making stuff that other people want, or I'd be making stuff that I could care less about. It's not the editing that I love, it's the actual act of creating something that's meaningful to me that's important. So, I will always keep editing as a hobby just for that reason alone.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. I'm also was at the point where I could go as a job, but I realized now if I do that, I will lose for me my hobby to
Right.
get away from the stress at work or something like that. So I'm grateful that I didn't do it.
I thought it was interesting because I was listening to Jazz talk about this, and she said, she loves editing. She loves the actual act of editing, so she didn't really see it as a problem to go and do
Yeah,
that as a career and then come home and do it at home because it was just something that she loved so much. I personally think that's awesome. Like, if you can have that kind of passion for something where it's all you can think about, it's all you want to do, it's what you get your enjoyment out of doing, then hey, by all means, I get the argument that you want to separate your work from your hobbies, but if you enjoy your work, if you enjoy what you're doing so much that you can do it as a job and as a hobby, then more power to you. But that is definitely not me.
I think it's more likely because for her is the process more likely what she
Yeah,
enjoys
exactly.
more likely, and for us it's more likely, yeah, to get away from that and just create something, and
Right.
that's it. Um, so
Exactly.
it's a different mindset in this way. So yeah, I understand. I understand your side completely, and I understand her side. Or Video Beats also is working professional and
Right.
editing on in the free time. So I understand both of them. And so your also since 2006 on the org and in the AMV watching community more likely, what are your thoughts about the evolution of AMVs? We saw back in the day when you had only the scenes cut down and nothing added to the point where we are now, where so much changes in some work, or we come to this point where these short edits are more popular in the AMV thing. Do you think it's a bad thing, or is this an evolution we should have expected, or do you think that's phase and there's always something new?
Yeah, so in the broader scope, I don't see that much of a difference between where things were in
Mm,
2006 when I started versus where we are now, in the sense that there has always been this kind of divide, right? So there's always been the editors who are trying to do something simple, straightforward, not technically complex, and then you have the people who are trying to do exactly the opposite. And this has always been a discussion in the community, a point of contention
mm,
sometimes. That hasn't really changed. I mean, the only difference is that now the means to obtain the software to do these more technical things are more available. It's easier to figure out how to use these programs thanks to, YouTube tutorials and
oh
things
yeah.
like that. I really don't see a difference that much in like the quantity of videos coming out that are simple versus those that are complex. So in that regard, I don't think much has changed other than the actual definition of what we consider to be technical or, effects
Mm,
heavy. However, you mentioned like shorter edits, like what I call like Instagram videos.
yeah.
Yeah. So short answer, no, I don't think those are going away. I despise those videos with every ounce of my being. Like it's a rant for a different day, but it is something that I really hate. However, at the same time, that's just my taste. And like while I hope that those never replace traditional AMVs, but I think they're here to stay. I think we need to learn to live with them. I think we can hate them as much as we want. I know you are not a fan of them either. So I'm speaking a little freely here, but at the same time, it's another means for people to express themselves, even if
Yeah.
that expression is somewhat trite and boring and it's just a bunch of presets. It can, at the very least, it can get people into the hobby, can serve as an entry point for the more ADD among us, and maybe it'll lead to something, to them exploring the more traditional side of the hobby. But I don't think it's going anywhere as long as Instagram and or TikTok or some other future substitute are around. I think we're going to be seeing these edits forever. I just would never recommend that someone try to go that route because I hate them so much.
Oh yeah, now I understand it. I being confronted with this part of the AMVs for a long time now, and I personally don't like them. But I'm at the point where I can understand the people who are doing that and why they're doing that. But there's the thing, like, yeah, it's not my taste. And the thing is, like, I find it great if when they can accept that and be not offended or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you're looking for an analog to the early days of AMV editing, I mean, this is maybe an obvious and not entirely correct comparison, but I think it is probably appropriate to say this is kind of similar to the Naruto, DBZ, Linkin
Mm,
Park videos. You had people who were just making stuff that, they didn't know anything else. They liked Linkin Park, they liked Naruto. It just made sense to put those things together. In the same way, it's just kind of an additional layer here, right? Instead of liking a certain anime or a certain music style, they like a certain style of AMV that they saw on Instagram.
mm.
So that's what they want to emulate. And maybe it's that they don't know any better or anything different, or maybe it's just that it's not the other stuff that you and I tend to like is not of interest to them. And for
Yeah.
what it's worth, I also feel like back in the day, those Naruto and Linkin Park videos kind of ended up being mostly ignored because there were so many of them that people just kind of tuned them out, and they ended up being kind of a joke in the AMV community, maybe for good reason. And I don't necessarily think these Instagram edits are going to go the same way, but I think it is possible to exist within the AMV community,
Mm.
enjoy AMVs, without worrying about this other kind of sub community that has sprung up, or without spilling too much ink complaining about them, because I could go on and it's just a waste of time. I mean, like,
Yeah, no, it's okay.
they like what they like and let them like it, and okay, that's fine. I don't have to like it. I'm not going to interact with your stuff because it's not my taste. But
Yeah.
if you enjoy it, if it's time well spent to you, then I can't say it was a waste.
Oh yeah, that for sure. If someone enjoys that and enjoys the process of doing that and creating something, also if it's shorter and more in the effect way, then it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And then I come to the point, where do you see yourself and AMVs in particular in like 10 years or so? I think it's a hard question because we don't know what happened in 5 years. But when you look forward, can you see yourself being still a part, being still editing? Or do you think like, oh yeah, the AMV community gets away because YouTube is blocking every AMV that got created or something like that? And
I hope I'm going to still be a part of the AIM. I have no plans to ever leave the AMV community. It's way too important to me, and it's like I've already talked ad nauseum about.
yeah,
It's my way of being creative. It's my primary way of being creative, right? So I don't see that changing. I feel like maybe beneath this question, there's kind of an assumption you're making that people think AMVs are dying or that AMVs are kind of on the decline. And just to counter that, I've been hearing this almost since I joined the org. I
yeah,
mean, this is not a new discussion or a new concept that somehow AMVs are dead or are dying. I don't think AMVs will ever die. I mean, how do you even define that, right? So if
yeah,
YouTube blocks every AMV, does that mean AMVs are dead? If I'm still making an AMV and sharing it with friends on Discord or file going back to
yeah.
file sharing or something, like I don't think honestly, I'll just say this. Even if there was no YouTube, if there was no animemusicvideos.org, if there was no Discord and I had no way to communicate with other AMV fans, I would still make an AMV. I would still continue to make AMVs because I make them for myself first and foremost. I don't make them to for other
Mm,
people and to enjoy. If other people like them, then great. That's wonderful, and I'm glad I could share that with you and inspire you or speak to you somehow. But for me, primarily, AMVs are something that it's a creative exercise for myself, and I have no plans to do that. I could be completely disconnected from the internet, but if I still have a computer with Vegas and anime clips, I'm going to make AMVs. So in that sense, no, I don't think AMVs are ever going to die. I don't think they're even really be in decline because we'll always have anime fans, we'll always have music fans,
yeah.
and you don't need much more than that to for people to start thinking, oh, let's put these two things I like together.
Yeah, and that's a point I was trying to get also, because I also think we have this discussion for years now, that
Yep.
all AMVs are dying and the people are stopping doing them. Yeah, we have some people who stopped editing over the years. Sure, hundreds of them, but we had also, as we can see on the Sashimi Discord, for example, there are always new people coming in and
Yeah,
joining and
absolutely.
starting, like Synesthesia production. He's doing that for 3 years, and so he's also a newcomer, and so I think it will be always like that. There are always people who stop editing, but being part of the community, and there are always new people coming in.
One thing I have recognized is that really the only people who make that claim that AMVs are dying or AMVs are dead are people who have not been a part of the community for a long time and have like completely
Mm,
divorced themselves from anything AMV related. And so I don't really take what they say with any kind of seriousness because they don't know what they're talking about. They're not involved. They're not actually watching AMVs. I don't know where this idea is coming from. I would be very curious to hear someone who is actively involved in the AMV community, who is maybe not necessarily making AMVs, but is at least watching them and keeping up and engaging in
mm.
discussion on a regular basis, who thinks that the AMV community is dying. I don't think anyone who fits that description exists. Maybe I'm wrong, but then I would want to know what their reason is for saying so. And yeah.
I think one thing that could lead to this option is more likely that we are having a more split community, which what I think is happening. We have more sub communities that are created. When we back then we had only the org and some sub forums for the other countries, for like for example AnimeSecurious.de for the German community or for the French community and so on. But we had already always the org as a big point where all the others lead to that. Nowadays you have the discords and so many sub communities. So maybe it's that way why people think, oh, it's dying because they have not the connection to the others.
Okay, I mean, I've heard that. I've been hearing that as well since 2000, since YouTube became a thing, right? When and
Yeah.
the org started to decline, people were like, AMVs are dying. You know, everyone's moving to
Mm,
YouTube. The community is fracturing. Blah blah blah. And that's true. The community is absolutely not as centralized as it once was, and that is kind of a shame. I'm not gonna lie.
oh yeah.
On the other hand, you've got all these sub communities, like you said, that are popping up. So if these new sub communities are just coming up out of nowhere, to me that's an argument against that AMVs are dying.
Yeah.
That to me is saying that, oh, all these other people, they want to keep making AMVs and they want to be around people that are also making AMVs. So they're getting together in their own kind of friend groups or sub communities. And that to me is kind of an indication that actually maybe AMVs as a whole are thriving.
Yeah, that's just my point because I'm a person who's wandering around the internet and communities just to talk about AMVs and all that stuff,
Right.
and not many do that. What I realized,
Right.
so that's the one thing. Maybe it's just I see that for that example because I joined like in the past few months like 3, 4 communities with different users that I don't see on the other
Sure.
Discord servers. So I think it's just more like we have this split up communities, but we have a lot of them, and I think it doesn't look it's dying, and that's one thing I really hope that we that this is a thing that will not die. But I also think maybe we are growing more likely. How it's in the US with the conventions, how many more people get to the contests or entering the contests. So yeah, don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't really have a good measurement from that perspective
Mm,
myself, so I can't really comment on that. I don't really know how you would measure, like how you would give any objective measure to the health or vitality of the AMV scene. It's because it's so. I mean, it manifests in so many different ways, right? So you
yeah,
have YouTube videos and creators on YouTube. You have AMV news. You have the contests, the conventions. You
yeah.
have Instagram community. Like there are all these different kind of places you can go for content. And I mean, I don't know by what measure you would say, oh, this is doing really well or this is doing really poorly,
Yeah.
because it's kind of a unique medium that doesn't really compare to much else. Like you can't compare it to another fandom really and say, oh well, look how AMVs are doing against this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you would measure it. But from my own perspective, from what I have observed, I think it's silly to claim that AMVs are on any sort of decline. I don't know. Whenever an editor leaves, I feel like you have two new editors who come in and take their place, and
Yeah.
probably one of those will stick around for a long time.
Yeah, we had always that some people joined and stayed just for a few years and others people stayed their whole life. So do you have anything in mind what you want to talk about?
What I would say is if you are I'm going to do a little plug
Yeah.
here, and I apologize. I don't like necessarily doing this, but as long as I have your ear, listener, if you are a fan of AMVs, and if you're whether you're newer to the scene or if you're just looking for ways to improve, I would recommend checking out some of my non AMV content on my YouTube channel, because I talk more about kind of AMV theory, editing theory, not so much technical how to do this or this, but more just why do you do this or this. And I have a series called What Makes It Great that breaks down AMVs that I really like. And I talk scene by scene about what those videos do really well. So I'd recommend checking that out if that's
Oh
your
yeah.
thing, first of all. Second of all, also another plug, I apologize, but I do have a blog where I write about AMVs. And specifically, for the past 8 years, I've been writing, well, it changes from year to year, but for the past few years anyway, I've been doing like top 50 lists of my favorite AMVs from each year. So that's a really great place to go if you want to see some great stuff and a lot of stuff that you probably wouldn't find on your own. Please check that out if you enjoy watching AMVs. And then, not a plug, but just a general word of advice for anyone who is looking to get better at editing. The best thing you can do, and I'm not joking, the absolute best thing you can do is to just watch a ton of AMVs. And don't just seek out stuff you think you'll like. Make sure you also watch stuff that, you know, you look at the song or the anime and you're like, ooh, this does not appeal to me. Watch that video. You may be surprised, but if you don't like it, that's also valuable information. If you can point out what it is you don't like about that video so that you can avoid doing that in your own work. I promise you, the most important thing you can do is to just watch videos, figure out what it is you like, and keep watching more and more videos and see if you can point out to yourself what it is you like about that video. I promise you will start to improve in your own work if you have that kind of library of content in your head that you can reach into whenever you start making your own stuff. So those are 3 things I guess I would say.
Oh yeah, that the last one is a very, very good point to watch videos, because I think many people's just watching videos and like it because they like the song or like the anime. That's why I often say, like, okay, watch videos and think about why is the video good in your opinion? What makes it good in your opinion? If you
Yes.
come to the point where you say, oh yeah, because I like the song, then is it really a good video, or is it just good because you like the song? And the same goes with the anime. If you're at the point and say, oh, I like the combination they are used for the song and the anime, then we get to a point where you can figure out stuff. Okay, why is it good, this combination? What makes it good? And
Right.
to get into this point, yeah, that's a very, very good advice. And the other points, yeah, I think the people should check out your content blog with the top 50 videos of the last years. They are always very, very interesting, and I find myself always there with some videos I really overlooked and was surprised to see them.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
also the other stuff I saw on your channel, like the What Makes It Great, or the last one where we talked about Twixtor, that
Yeah.
many people used, maybe not in the right way, or just used it because people think it's the best tool and it's needed to be in the video.
Right.
So I think the people should check it out, and we should not talk too much about it so they get
Yeah.
interested in it.
There you go. Yeah. Check that out too. Yep.
Okay, so have you any shout outs now? Do you want to make someone to thank or to say, hey?
I'm just gonna, yeah, there are a few editors that I do want to shout out just because I really like their stuff and I don't think they're getting the proper attention that they're due. So these are just, I would recommend, first of all, one editor that you should definitely check out. Her name is Kat Renat. She makes really, really phenomenal videos that have a lot of heart, a lot of meaning, kind of like I was talking about earlier in the podcast. And she just has this really intuitive sense of how to select scenes and how to do things like internal sync. And her videos are just generally really, really well constructed and put together, and I cannot recommend them enough. So that's Kat Renat. The other editor that I really do want to kind of shout out is one that has higher subscriber count than Kat Renat or myself or a lot of editors I'm aware of, actually, but you probably don't know him, is Truth Crab. And I by the time this podcast comes out, I'll probably have released an interview with Truth Crab on my channel. So go check that out if that's interesting to you. But his videos are kind of like, if you're thinking of like Instagram edits, for example, and really techie stuff, his videos are like exactly the opposite of that. They're bare bones, simple cuts and fades, really nothing else. And I love his style. It's a really kind of interesting regression into a very reserved, yeah, simplistic style is not exactly the word I'm looking for. It's very sparse, and I think that there's just something magical and interesting about his work that no other editor is really capturing. So I would also recommend you check out his channel. He has over 800 videos on his channel, all of which were released between 2019 and now, which I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but early to mid 2022, right? So I touch on that in my interview with him, and he explains how, like, kind of how he was able to do that. But
that's a point I want really to hear, because I'm lost. I'm completely stunned by the number. When I first saw it, I didn't know him that well. The first time you mentioned him, I was like, okay, who is this guy? And then I looked at it, saw the number of videos, and then the other people's mentioned, so, oh yeah, he's just doing that for 3 years. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Checked out, and then was like, holy shit, how does he do that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. But his work is all like, and I'm not joking, like 80 to 90% of the videos I watch of his I love. So it's not just like he's throwing crap out there. It's all really good
Yeah.
stuff in my opinion. But so those two, and actually, you know what? While I'm on the mic here, I'm also gonna shout out Viva Fringe. He's another editor that I think is has some really solid work. He's only been editing AMVs for a couple of years now, I think. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how long, but he's a newer editor, I think, and he's improved quite a bit over the years. And so
Oh, for sure.
yeah, his stuff tends to also be on the simpler side, but he's also doing some weird kind of experimental stuff at the same time. And I don't know, I always look forward to his releases as well. So Cat Renat, Truth Crab, Viva Fringe, check him out.
So we come to an end. Thank you very much for being my guest today.
Of
It was a
course.
pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah, pleasure was mine, man. This was really fun. Thanks for having me. This is great.
And people, don't forget to check out Crack the Sky on YouTube, and I will all link in the descriptions. So thank you very much, and good night.
Bye.
And I hope all the listeners out there had some entertaining and informative time with our podcast today, and will coming back for the next episode. So see ya.